Hello, welcome to another episode of Inside the Huddle. Today is Saturday, May 18th. Hopefully, everybody is enjoying their weekend so far. We've got a lot to discuss here today on episode 13 of the Inside the Huddle podcast. NFL schedule is released. We've got every single game for this season. Lots of excitement, both primetime games, obviously, games throughout the day, every Sunday. You could feel the excitement for the football season continue to build. We're going to break down all angles of the schedule, toughest opponents, toughest, teams with the toughest schedules. We'll break down the Cowboys, we'll break down the Jets, we'll break down the best primetime games, best games in general this season as the 272 game masterpiece has been complete. So, DiMari, a lot to get into. How's it going, man?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been such a great week, starting with the NCAA trailer that
Yep.
we got yesterday. So excited. Cannot wait until July 19th, mix of June, July. July 19th, but also, like you just said, we get the schedule. We kind of see some games lined up, who's playing who, what weeks to kind of look more forward to. So I'm excited to get into not only the primetime games, but also our teams,
Yep.
their win totals, maybe talk about a few teams that we might sneak into the playoffs. So let's have a good show.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the schedule announcement every year is great because it happens in May, so the draft is over, free agency is over. There's still some guys out there. You'll still get some news there, but you start to now fully transition into getting ready for training camp. And now that you kind of look at your roster as it's complete, once you get the schedule, you kind of get an idea of 9 wins, 10 wins, 11 wins. Do we hit the over on our win total? Do you hit the under? And you also start to pick out some games that maybe you would like to go to. So it's just an exciting time as a whole as a football fan. So let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right into it. We'll start here with some of our favorite matchups this upcoming season. Then we'll break down, of course, Dallas and then the Jets schedule as well. I guess we can I've got a good amount of top games. I know you do too. So I guess we can kind of go back and forth. Maybe you give one or two, I can give one or two, and we can break down some of these matchups because primetime slate this year, even Thursday Night Football, which is crazy. Thursday Night Football, sometimes you were better off not watching at all. This year it's good. It's a good slate. It looks good as of right now. But what are some of your top games you're looking forward to this year?
So number one, I know you're going to be pretty happy about this one, but it's going to be week one. It's going to be Jets and 49ers. I mean, just the history of Rodgers and playing against San Francisco, and just he's coming back this year, hopefully more than 11 seconds of play time for him, more than 4 plays. But just to see the Jets kind of, starting to kind of, we saying off air, get some respect, get some of these primetime games that we were robbed of last year because of Rodgers' injury. Had to watch a lot of Zach Wilson. Hopefully, it's a lot of Aaron Rodgers. We're talking about two teams that might meet again in the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know.
Hopefully,
So I'm really
please.
excited for that one. Really excited.
Hopefully you're right about that. Yeah, week one. I like there's a lot of Jets fans out there that are scared of the week one matchup. They wanted Denver, they wanted, New England or somebody like that to open up a nice soft opponent. And I disagree. I'm fine with it. I wanted to be home week one just because, the home opener week one, there's nothing better than that. Now we have to wait till week 3 after 2 straight games on the road, but it is what it is. But I like it. If there's a time to play San Francisco, you'd rather it be early in the season, week 1, when we're going to be healthy, fresh out of training camp, not in December when we're more banged up. You got to then go out all the way out west late in the season. So if there was a time to play them, it would be early on in the year. And they're also, maybe you catch them on a little bit of a Super Bowl loss hangover or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a great game. 2 of arguably the most talented rosters in football. Rodgers coming back. The history goes all the way back to draft night when they passed up on him. Many years they've had battles through the regular season and the postseason. So it's going to be a great game. 2 good offenses, just dominant defenses with pass rushes, Hassan Reddick, Nick Bosa. It's just the talent on that field is going to be a lot of fun. So that'll be a great game. Definitely agree with you there. I will say one of my top primetime games, I'll start with the opener, Ravens Chiefs. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'll start here in week 1 as well. Thursday night at Arrowhead. I wish it was in Baltimore. I feel like all the time, every time the Chiefs play a really, really difficult team at home, they always get them at home. Then they get Cincinnati week 2 at home. Like the 2 toughest teams arguably on their schedule, they get at home, which is just unfortunate. but that's going to be a lot of fun. You rematch of the AFC title game. You know the Ravens are going to be out for blood. You know they're going to want revenge after losing to them on their home turf last year, to obviously miss an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. So, they're going to come out. They got better in the offseason. It's a Ravens team that, you feel good about. They have a good chance to win the AFC. They have a good chance. Them Texans, we've talked about it a lot. So they're going to want an opportunity to go into Kansas City, take down Mahomes, get that revenge, start Kansas City 0-1 like Detroit did last year. Give them a little bit of what Detroit gave them. And for Kansas City, well, they get a chance to start out 1-0. They get a chance to show off their new shiny toy and Xavier Worthy. So I think this should be a lot of fun. So I'll say that as another game as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that one. Great point. Seeing Xavier Worthy against what we can probably say is one of the better defenses, better
Yeah.
secondaries in all of football. So he gets to come out and kind of show why, he's worth the hype. So hopefully he can come out and maybe that's his coming out party. Maybe he gains some trust from Mahomes. So I think that's going to be a fun one. And to get it rolling to my next game, I'm going to stick with Kansas City, which not really a prime time game, but it's probably going to be 1 o'clock kickoff, nationally televised, or 4 o'clock. But
Mm.
it's Atlanta going to Kansas City, week 3. I'm really excited for that when we get to see a revamped Falcons team that a lot of people like myself think they can do some damage this year. Like they can be very, very good. I've already predicted them to win their division, so just seeing them up against the reigning Super Bowl champs to really get to test them and test Kirk Cousins, see what this team is about. So I think that is going to be a good one. I think that one's going to be a shootout, a lot of offense. And you already know I love Kirk Cousins. I'm on the Kirk Cousins train. So
Yep.
hopefully he can march into Arrowhead and get Atlanta a win.
Yeah, the Falcons, it's funny, for a while now, the last couple years, you've kind of looked at opposing team schedules and you look at Atlanta, and most of the time you chalk them up as a win. You can't say it anymore. They got a quarterback, they got Kirk Cousins. Maybe he'll be walking out of wait, that's at home, right?
It's at Kansas City.
Yeah, or yeah, Kansas City home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we'll be walking out of Kansas City with the arrowhead. Or not the arrowhead, with the chains on. We'll
With
be
the
walking
chains
out
on.
Arrowhead with the chains on. Kirk Cousins on the plane again with the chains on. It's yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. Atlanta's going to be a really interesting team this year. For all the NFC, they're a team that it feels like they're could potentially go out there, win 10, 11 games, or it feels like they're kind of a high ceiling, low floor team, or disaster strikes and they're a 6-7 win team. But they may change that. The coach. They of course brought in Kirk Cousins. That'll be a fun matchup. And, Kansas City, Kansas City's beginning of the season, it's difficult. Obviously, they have a lot of these games at home, but it's still a difficult stretch when you look at the way they start the season with 3 potential playoff teams, especially opening up with 2 AFC North foes as well. So, like that one there. I will go a little bit further. This is much later in the season, which I feel like in a way we were a little bit robbed of this. Week 16, the first CJ Stroud, Patrick Mahomes battle. Unfortunately, the NFL had to wait all the way until week 16 for this, but I'll still put it on here. This is a game that I think a lot of NFL fans will circle on their calendar. Stroud going to Arrowhead to face Mahomes. This will be December football. There's a chance this game is maybe to there's a chance this game has some implication on who takes over the 1 seed in the AFC. So I'm really looking forward to this one. Houston obviously didn't have Kansas City last year on their schedule, so we didn't see a Stroud Mahomes battle yet. We were 1 game away from seeing it in the title game, but unfortunately, Houston obviously couldn't get it done against Baltimore. So Stroud going Arrowhead for the first time, hostile environment. December football, there's a chance this will be a fight for the 1 seed. And really, this will be a massive game for Houston because just looking at the end of the season for them, they've got a stretch of 3 games against Miami, Kansas City, and Baltimore. So there's a good chance those 3 games could decide a lot on just their season as a whole. And that will be the middle of that stretch. So I will say going all the way into December, but still a game I'm going to look forward to. And that's Houston versus Kansas City. Stroud versus Mahomes for the first time since Stroud's been drafted.
And week 16s are still important because that's when I think most of the most meaningful football is played from like
Yep.
week 10 up until the end of the year. So I really like that one. I'm looking forward to that one as well. I am going to throw 2 out here that both are Houston games. So just two briefly, I got Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, week 2. Kind of see the new rookie, all the hype about them and the new looking Chicago Bears going to play the Texans, which I feel like Chicago could be a team similar to what Houston was last year. Just come up out of nowhere and kind of take the league by storm. That one's definitely going to be fun. And then we're going to go week 10, Lions and Texans. Battle of the uniforms, battle of two teams that
Yeah.
you wouldn't even dare turn your TV on to watch maybe, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Now everybody wants to watch it.
If you
So
paid me to
I'm
watch those
excited.
two teams, sometimes I want to watch them.
That is the Thursday night games that we were talking about last time, where
Yeah.
you're just like, you're not watching that.
Yeah.
So just those two again, battle of the uniforms. Dan Campbell, D'Amico Ryans, Stroud, Goff, Stingley, Amon Ra. Like that is going to be such a fun game. And similar to the Jets, Houston is a team that's getting a lot of respect, a lot of primetime games, and they get to prove themselves. And some people, myself, are on the bandwagon of Houston where, hey, they might go pretty far. They might dethrone Kansas City. So these are two games they get to really prove themselves like, hey, last year wasn't a fluke. CJ Stroud's
Yep.
not a fluke. No sophomore slump. And we need to be respected. So I like both of those games for Houston. Very great games.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to that Lions one as well. That'll be that's Sunday night, right? Yeah, Sunday night
Yeah.
football. Battle of the Lions, Texans. That'll be a lot of fun. Two teams that, Houston as well, proving that they're not a fluke. And I think Detroit as well, proving that that wasn't a 1-year thing with Goff, that they are truly building something there. This core with Amon-Ra, St. Brown, like you mentioned, Jared Goff, of course, got the bag. All of those guys, all those pieces, great offensive line. They've added some pieces to their defense to prove that, hey, we could still win the NFC North. Because you look at the NFC North too now, and everyone's talking about the Bears and Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. Everyone's talking about the Packers, Jordan Love. He's the next Rodgers. They're going to do great things. It feels like, Detroit has kind of flown under the radar a little bit here. And it seems like maybe they go into the season a little bit with chip on their shoulder. So that'll be a lot of fun. I will also say this, just when talking about the Bears, I think both Bears-Packers matchups will be awesome this year. Forever, the Packers have owned the Bears. It feels like the tide is, I don't know if it's changing, but it's starting to become more competitive again. Bears this season with Caleb Williams, they'll make some noise. Of course, Green Bay last year, shocking the NFL world in the playoffs. Really shocking. Really just shocking in general. I don't think people thought Jordan Love would be that good in year one, not even just in the playoffs, just the season as a whole. So does Caleb Williams at all give Jordan Love a taste of his own medicine, where he goes out there and has a great rookie season? So I think those matchups are a lot of fun. I will also say this for an actual matchup that I'm looking forward to. It's late in the season again, but Lions-Niners rematch of the NFC title game a year ago. Dan Campbell, please do not go for it on 4th down 3 times in this game. This will be a huge game. And also, you look at the Lions' schedule before this. They've got a stretch of games before this game. Indy, Chicago, Green Bay, Buffalo, Chicago, and then San Fran. So a gauntlet to end the year for Detroit. This game could mean a whole lot depending on how those 4 or 5 weeks before then go down. And again, similar to the Texans Chiefs, this might be a battle for the 1 seed in the NFC. So that'll be another game I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, that was my last game right there as well. Lions Niners NFC Championship rematch, and I think you said it perfectly. Just that can be a game where we're talking about the 1 seed is up for grabs, and whenever that maybe rest their starters the next week.
Yep.
So that game's gonna have a lot of playoff indications. Definitely, kind of feel bad for the Lions. Like you got to go back to San Francisco again after losing there last season to go to the Super Bowl. I kind of wish this game would have been at Ford Field. It would have
Yeah.
been electric. But I mean, Lions fans travel well. We seen a lot of Honolulu blue last time when those two met. So I'm excited for that one. Don't think it'll be a shootout like it was in the NFC Championship. Maybe the defenses might get off the bus this time. But no, it's going to be a fun one. And this is probably one of two matchups we might see between the two. We might see them again in the playoffs, NFC Championship. So I think this is just round one for those, but that's going to be a fun one.
I'll also say this. Hopefully Dan Campbell's brain gets off the bus this time
Off
too.
the bus as well. Maybe take that with you from Detroit. How about that?
Yeah.
That's
I
where it
think
starts.
Yeah, I think you could actually make a case for this game to be week one. And I love Jets Niners, but I think you can make a case. Detroit Niners week one, rematch of the NFC title game right out of the gate. I think you could have made the case that this game could have been earlier, but I think it's also from a fan perspective. You want some of those good games late in the year. Nothing better than December football. If this game's for the 1 seed, rest the starters next week, there's a lot on the line. And yeah, like you said, 3 weeks later, they might be facing off in a divisional round, might be facing off in the title game again. So it's going to be a lot of battles. The NFC's very, very exciting this year. I also have just 2 other games. Bengals Cowboys week 14. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. That'll be Monday Night Football. So in Dallas, Joe Burrow versus Dak. Another late season matchup. Could mean a lot. Non-conference, of course. So wouldn't have a whole lot of. It's not like it's Dallas Niners late in the year, but it's non-conference, but still 2 teams that, if they're healthy, could make runs. And in Jets Bills as well, week 6. Bills back at MetLife, another Monday night game. That'll be the first matchup between the two. Little rematch from last year's Monday night game, which we all know how that went. So hopefully this year Jets win, but do it not at the cost of Aaron Rodgers. So that will be another fun one. And then Thursday night, we've talked about it. Look at the Thursday night schedule. There's a couple games on here that are, not great, but the Thursday night schedule, it feels like the NFL actually made an attempt to put good teams on primetime, not just throw the Panthers on there every week, it seems, Washington on there.
Yeah.
They made an attempt. Now, week 7, you're going to want to close your eyes. Denver, New Orleans is going to be ugly. But other than that, there's some good matchups. Now, there is some matchup. I feel like every matchup features, other than that game, I feel like every matchup features a team that you can make the case could make the playoffs. And I think that's got to get you excited, really, when you look at it, because, we can go down one by one, but, even if for the viewers, if you just look like every week, there's probably at least one playoff team playing on Thursday night, other than that New Orleans Denver game. So Thursday's been. What are some of your, I guess, expectations this year for Thursday? Should be better. They're going to be, hopefully not games that should be on Comedy Central.
I mean, yeah, I think they should be a lot better. I don't remember I think that Raiders Chargers 63 like 20 something blowout was a Thursday night.
Yeah.
Like I'm not expecting that, but I think they're all going to be good. They're all going to be close games again. Besides they're all going to be close games. They're all going to be interesting. Besides Denver and New Orleans,
That'll
I
be like
think that one's
6-3.
probably it's probably like who can outmid each other during the game.
Yeah.
Just that one's gonna be bad, pretty boring. You get to see those ugly Denver uniforms on Thursday after you just spent all day at work and just want to wind down, watch football on Amazon Prime. But yeah, I think the games should be good. I think you have a great point where there's even some teams like Minnesota who has a few games on Prime, Thursday night, and you're kind of just like maybe they could be a third team out of that North to make the playoffs if there's some slippage with Green Bay or Chicago's not as good. So I don't think a lot of the games are going to be ones where you are probably going to bed at 9:30. I think they're going to be pretty decent. They should, I hope.
Yeah, I agree. I think Green Bay Detroit should be a lot of fun. Rams Niners, 2 great AFC North showdowns between Cleveland Bengals, Cleveland Pittsburgh, and then Bengals Ravens. Those should be a lot of fun. Jets Texans, I think, should be good. There are a couple matchups that are kind of could be blowouts, like Jets Patriots. I think too Dallas Giants. I know maybe you're a little bit more skeptical than I am, but Dallas Giants, I think, will probably be. I mean, maybe the Giants wear their uniforms that game. Can't spoil them yet, but if the Giants wear those uniforms, never mind. Thursday Night Football is gonna be garbage.
That's going to be a blowout by the first quarter, like it was last year, if that happens.
Yeah, that is true. Dallas back on primetime at MetLife with those jerseys. What do they score? 40 points?
60.
Yeah, or maybe even double it. 80. It's gonna be 70-20 in those hideous uniforms. The Giants are gonna be running their 1925 playbook in those.
We're not spoiling anything yet, but as someone who works, retail, the Orlando Magic, you want to put out your best uniforms, and it's a whole process. You have a jersey release party, all those type of things. I
Those
just
do not
don't see
deserve a
them.
party.
I do not see those selling a single jersey. Like those are going to be a giveaway, 50% off, 20% off during the season because those
Clearance.
are. I don't know what's worse. We kind of talked about it off air, but there's one jersey that we kind of forgot about. We did mention the New York Titans one. We mentioned the Green Bay blue with the whatever. What about the
Yeah.
Broncos yellow and brown, white stripes down the side of the pants? Those Giants jerseys are up there with those Broncos jerseys. Those are terrible. I don't
Yeah.
know what's worse. Those jerseys or
Yeah,
watching
those
Daniel Jones throw the
Broncos
football
ones
for
were
17.
hideous.
Those were bad.
And then those Eagles ones as well, which I know we'll get to this a little bit later on as
Oh
well,
yeah,
but
those are bad too.
those were bad. There's been some bad ones.
I just
So
we'll get into it later.
yeah,
It's bad though.
it is. So yeah, so those are some of our favorite primetime games. Now we'll get into our teams. If you want to start, we can start with Dallas. We'll start out west. We'll start with the Cowboys. We'll get to some big games for the Cowboys, most impactful games, some of their big stretches. But what are your overall thoughts on the Cowboys schedule?
The schedule is tough, and I know this is a topic for later, kind of like our ranking of easiest, toughest schedules. I don't really know how they find the analytics for that because looking at that schedule is tough. I mean, 7 of their first 10 games are playoff teams. They have a total of 8 playoff teams and some teams like Atlanta, some teams like Cincinnati that are going to be a lot better this year than they were last year. So I know it's kind of based off of last year, but if we're kind of looking at it in hindsight, Dallas has a very tough schedule. And over under is 10.5. I'm predicting 11-6 if all goes well. I mean, I think kind of the ceiling for them is 13-4. If that means Dak has to play absolutely out of his mind again. Ceiling is going to be 13-4. I say floor maybe is 6-11 if something wrong, which looking at the schedule, it's possible. The opponents, like, it's not a cakewalk. So I'm a little nervous. I'm not going to lie about their schedule.
Yeah, it's interesting because it feels like they kind of go to start the year every other for the first like 4 weeks, and then they just hit a stretch. Like they open up with Cleveland. That'll be tough. New Orleans is a winnable at home. Then Baltimore. That'll be tough even though it's home. And then the Giants on the road, you should win that. But then after that, they go through a stretch where they go, I know you know this, but just for the viewers, they go Pittsburgh, Detroit, bye, San Fran, Atlanta, Philly, Houston. That's brutal stretch. Now you get what Philly, Houston, Detroit at home, Pittsburgh, San Fran, Atlanta on the road. But then after that, you get 2 against Washington and the Giants. So those 2 are very winnable. And then kind of end of the year is better. Like you play Cincy and then you got Carolina, Tampa. Those are both winnable. You know, Tampa's good, but
Yeah.
Dallas should beat them.
Yeah.
Especially at home. And then Philly on the road would be tough, and you close out with Washington. So it's weird. It's like different spells. There's a couple stretches, but yeah, that middle stretch, I think it's good that you guys have your bye week during that. Because ideally maybe you split 1-1 against Pittsburgh. So you go into your bye week, maybe 4-2, right? Probably, let's say,
Hopefully.
because you have Cleveland, you should beat New Orleans. I think you probably come out of your first 3 weeks 2-1. I think you beat New Orleans, and I think you'll split Cleveland and Baltimore because you do get Baltimore at home. So you get the tougher of those 3 at home, which is positive. But if you go 2-1, New York is winnable, 3-1, and then you split Pittsburgh, Detroit. So, and then you get your bye, which is good. But then you come out of that bye and you've got, 4 probably playoff teams, 2 of which are on the road. Man, they gave you guys 2 road games, right? You got to go out west right out of your bye week, man, or not
Tough.
out west. You got to go to San Francisco. That's not that far for you, but for you
Which
guys,
is still kind of out west.
yeah,
It's
it's
out
still a
there,
road
but
game into a tough environment. I mean, that stadium's never easy to play, and San Francisco
and
is a
I mean,
juggernaut.
if I'm correct, the last week 8 was San Francisco last year, and we saw how that wound
Yeah,
up. So I don't know. It's really brutal. I mean, you breaking down how you're breaking down. I think I can see 2-1. I can see 1-2, like those first 3 games. I
yeah,
mean, Baltimore is a team we really struggle with. 1-5, like overall record with Baltimore, just can't beat them for whatever reason. Cleveland, I mean, we just know how ferocious that defense is, and then you're playing at Cleveland. It's
Mhm.
going to be hype. Like they're going to come out swinging. They kind of want some respect from last year. It's just like we had everybody hurt last year. Everyone kind of counted us out. Now we're getting our starters back. Deshaun Watson's probably going to should look better than what he looked last year. I think Nick Chubb should be back by then. So like it's a lot riding on that game, especially Brady calling his first game. I think Cleveland's going to go in
Yeah.
there so hyped, so motivated, but kind of similar to what you were saying with the Jets and the Niners. You kind of want an easy game to start off, kind of knock some rust off or whatever. But I think those tougher opponents kind of sets the tone for the rest of the year. So if you can go into Cleveland and find a way to get a win, I think that kind of sets you up for success kind of following weeks 2, weeks 3, and then so on. And as you kind of know, similar to last year, us in Miami, the tale was like, oh, you beat up on the bad teams, you can't beat the winning teams, you can't beat the playoff teams.
Yeah, that's very
This is a
true.
chance. You have to like rewrite the narrative. Week 1, go into Cleveland, get a big win. Saints, another one similar to last year, where you go into Arizona and you kind of overlook them, and you're just like, all right, chalk this up as a W. You go to Arizona and you lose. Don't overlook the Saints. I don't care how bad the roster looks.
Yeah.
Handle your business. So if you can handle those two, maybe even if you lose a close one to Baltimore, I mean, you're still sitting at 2-1 the first 3 weeks. I think that's all they kind of need to at least get to that 11-6, like I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because it is a great point. Like the Cowboys this year, if they win 11, 12 games, there is not going to be the narrative of them having an easy
Mhm.
schedule. There can't be. And then right out of the gate, I think Cleveland's such a weird team. I actually think Cleveland's schedule, despite what the numbers tell you, the numbers say their schedule is difficult. I actually think Cleveland's schedule is sort of favorable early in the season,
I
other than
agree.
this matchup. But yeah, last year I was just looking at Dallas' schedule last year. Their first 4 games, they open up, of course, with the Giants, who weren't any good. Then they got the Aaron Rodgers, they got Zach Wilson Jets. You lost Arizona, but then you had New England and then Chargers. So you had, you had one playoff team in your first 5 weeks. So yeah, that was where that narrative came from. This year, it's not the case. What, 7 in their first 10, you said?
Yep, 7 in the first 10.
Yeah. So Cleveland, to me, it still comes down to what is Watson. Like if Watson's good, they could easily win 12 games. But if he is what last year Watson was, they're gonna be 9, 10 wins maybe.
Yeah, about 9
Not
and
even.
8,
Yeah, 9
8
and
and
8 probably.
9, depending on Pittsburgh. I
They're
feel
gonna be
like a lot of
fighting.
that division can
Yeah.
change.
hmm So I guess just look at some of their schedule. What do you believe Dow some of their biggest games is? Because we can break down that as well. Like some of the biggest games on their schedule that stretches as well. Big stretches for them that dictates really where they go this year.
So you want me to go 1 through 5 kind of off the bat, or do you prefer me to just name one and we kind of digest,
You
kind of talk about it a little bit?
you can throw them all out there. Yeah.
So, well, I'm going to go 1 through 5 exact order. Houston being
Yeah.
number 1, Detroit being 2, season opener at Cleveland is 3, week 17 at Philly. I know we get them early in the year, but I just feel like week 17, meaningful football, and
hmm
could be fighting for the division kind of similar as last year. And week 8 against San Francisco, you kind of got to get that bad taste out your mouth, stop letting them beat up on you. So every one of those teams are capable of making a conference championship. Each and every one. You're going to probably see Detroit in the playoffs. You Philly twice already got to beat them to win the division. You might see San Fran in the playoffs again along with week 8. So I think kind of knocking down those NFC front runners is important first and foremost. Cleveland being week 1, kind of just talked about it. I feel like you need to set the tone for the rest of the year. And then Houston, I know a lot of the storylines is kind of like, oh, Battle of Texas. Let's see who's the better Texas team. The all, fun and games of it. But I also think for Dallas in that standpoint, yes, you do want to be the team to kind of run Texas. Like last time you played this team, they were 1-9-1, and it took a 98-yard game-winning drive from Dak Prescott to win that game. This is a way better Houston team, and I just don't. I think that's the game they need to win, especially again week 11. Not really divisional implications, but you don't want to get into a situation where last year where you got Philly sitting at like 10-1, whatever the case is, the record around that time, and you are sitting at 3-4 losses, and you kind of need some help from everybody else. They got to handle business, beat Houston. I think those are the most important 5 games for them this year. Got to win. All are must wins, or at least 3-2 in that stretch of games.
Yeah, I'd agree. Houston is huge. Houston's a big one for a lot of teams. Really, they've caused it's crazy. And you give them a ton of credit how much of a
Yeah.
threat they are now, popping up on the schedule. But yeah, I think that late season too against Philly, week 17, that could depend a lot. I mean, that could be probably for the division potentially. I can look Philly off the top of my head. They play what, or I don't. They play the Giants the last week of the year. So if it's one of those like you got to win your next 2 or whatever, and Philly's got to win, like whatever the case may be. Like if you win that game, all you have to do is then beat Washington for the division. If they win that game, all they got to do is beat the Giants. That could be a situation where, like, if you lose to Philly, what are the chances they lose to the Giants when the probably season's over? And then the same thing. It's almost like last year, right? You guys had to play
It's
Washington,
very
secure the
similar.
division. So yeah, that'll be a big one. I think if they're, and again, this is so early. But this is what's exciting about the schedule is really release you can kind of break it down. If there was a time to play San Francisco, it would be that week because the week prior they got to play Kansas City. So that game's going to take a lot out of them. You got to play Kansas City. Now they will come off of a mini bye because they have a Thursday night in Seattle and then they play Kansas City at home. But if there was a week, the Dallas has the bye week, they'll have the extra week to prepare. If there was a time to play San Fran, it would be right there where they're going to come off of a loss or win or tie if we want to get weird. Loss, win or lose, that's going to be an emotional battle for San Francisco against Kansas City. And then they got to obviously, then you guys are going to be well rested. So if there was a time, you kind of get San Francisco in a good spot, but you still wish you got them at home. Going on the road is always tough
Yeah.
there. It's just a tough place to play. That stretch to me, I think, like you said, that stretch of Detroit, San Fran, Atlanta, Philly, Houston, the way you guys come out of that will probably depend on where you're going, I'd assume. Luckily, you get Philly and Houston home for that, I think that's favorable because you do have to go on the road for, like you said, San Fran and Atlanta. That Atlanta game is going to be sneaky. That's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun game.
That is going to be a very fun one, and I should be attending that one in person. I've never been inside Mercedes-Benz, but I have been outside, and I think that's just again an environment where you said earlier, where you kind of looking at Atlanta earlier a few years ago on schedule, you're kind of just like, it's Atlanta, but now Atlanta is going to be
Yeah.
a team to beat, and around that time, I mean, I can't think of Atlanta's schedule off the top of my head, but maybe around that time they're only sitting at a few losses, and you need that game because it is the NFC, and it is going to come down to the playoff seeding. So that is a very big one for them. Do not overlook the Falcons. Please don't.
No. Yeah, the Falcons, I'm glad you brought I feel like the Falcons this year, they might be a team that gets overlooked a lot. There's going to be,
And
especially early in the year before they really make an impact. Like I mean, they're scheduled to open up. They get Pittsburgh, Philly, and Kansas City right out of the gate, which isn't easy. But open up, I could see a Kansas City after, let's say, 2 huge wins over Baltimore and Cincinnati. I could see them kind of having a hangover tripping up against Atlanta. So it'll be interesting. But any other closing thoughts on Dallas before we head over to the Jets?
just gotta again just handle some business. Hopefully, we're talking about 11-6.
Yeah. Then they hit what you said, ceiling 13-4.
Still in 13-4. I don't see that happening. Just realistically, I'm more leaning 11. I'm 11-6. That's prediction. I am more leaning 10-7, but I'm going to stick with 11-6 for right now.
11-6. Sounds like a plan. All right. So we move on here to the Jets, who hopefully this is every year I look at the schedule and talk myself into a successful season. It hasn't worked. So hopefully this is finally the year we get a successful stretch of wins. Just opening up with the Jets schedule in general. So they made history with 6 primetime games in the first 11 weeks. So the NFL clearly wants Rodgers on primetime. As I've talked about a lot on this show, we don't know what Rodgers' future is. So they're going to try and capitalize on every possible game. This might be it for him. Who knows? We will see. That's a 2025 conversation, not even the focus right now. So they get to 6 primetime games. They get 7 standalone games to open up. They got a London game, which I'll be honest, I absolutely hate. I despise when my team plays in London. It's just 9:30 in the morning. If you win, it's nice because you get the rest of the day. You don't got to worry about anything. But when you lose, it just ruins the rest of the day of football. So it's kind of that game where I know I've got to have confidence in my team and I got to have confidence the Jets will win that game. But I'm always afraid because if they lose that game, it's like, oh, the rest of the day is ruined. You can't even enjoy the 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, or Sunday night game. So I just don't like the London games. Just give me 1 o'clock if you're going to play it on Sunday. But either way, they go out to London to play Minnesota. So yeah, so I think that look, they open up right out of the gate with San Francisco. That'll be a tough matchup for sure. But if the Jets are as good as we all talk about them are, if they are as good as they look on paper, they will go in there with a realistic chance of winning. And I don't think that's biased. I don't think that's me being a fanboy. I think that's realistic. Both teams have great defenses. Both teams have weapons all over the place on offense. You've got battle of arguably 2 of some of the better running backs in football, the best running back in football in CMC, and in Breece Hall, who is, arguably one of the better running backs there, closely or a little bit behind him. So that'll be fun. Jets will be healthy as well. Hopefully at that point you get a healthy Tyron Smith. Hopefully nothing happens during camp. Knock on wood, please stay healthy. But in terms of I guess I'll toss over you quick, before we get into some of the, some of my biggest games for the Jets. What are your, I guess, thoughts from an outsider on the Jets schedule?
Similar to Dallas, they gotta prove themselves. I mean, I picked the Jets to win the division. I think they will do that, but a lot of people are counting them out already. A lot of people believe
Yeah.
in Buffalo. I mean, some even still believe in Miami. So for the Jets, I think that's kind of one of those things where it's just, hey, we got a Hall of Fame quarterback and we got one of the best defense in the NFL. Let me show you what we were capable of doing last year. So to circle back to that week 1 game, I really like that it is San Francisco because San Francisco is a team last year that was 2-dimensional, where they had a great offense, but they also had a great defense. And then for the Jets, who were supposed to be 2-dimensional, we have a great offense and a great defense. So both of those units kind of get to test each other, like which offense is better, which defense is going to come out on top. So I really think the NFL did a great job of just that week 1 matchup. Both teams get a chance to prove themselves. And like I was just saying with the Cowboys and for the Jets, that week 1 opener, like that kind of sets the tone for the year, especially for 2 teams trying to win a division, kind of start to see how the year might go along. You kind of get a sense of what your team can be, what they need to fix, and just a soft opponent week 1 that kind of isn't going to help with that. So for the Jets, I think you go out and you win that week 1, Buffalo, you're going to be in some trouble. I really think so.
Yeah, I agree. It's a chance for the Jets to send a message to the rest of the league, and that's what I want. I think a lot of Jets fans, I've seen on Twitter and people talking, it's like they all have that loser mentality of, oh, we got to play San Francisco. You got to believe in this group. We got a really good roster. We got a really good team. I think we've got the most talented roster in the division. We've got to prove it. Healthy Rodgers, this team, there's no excuse this team shouldn't win at least 11 games, in my eyes. So, give me San Francisco week 1. I want that battle. We all wanted that battle last year. We got Buffalo. Tough matchup week 1. We found a way to win. Unfortunately, the circumstances were not what we expected, but like, I like this. I'm bring it on right away. So, and yeah, you send a message to the rest of the league. And look, if you lose, guess what? There's 16 games left. It's not the end of the world, So it's like, I'd be frustrated if they lose, but I feel like the Jets, they're kind of not in a terrible spot with having to play a team like that week 1, because nobody's expecting them to win either. Like, if they win, I think it again put the league on notice, shock a lot of people. If they lose, people will be like, oh, San
And I
Francisco's this
mean,
good again.
kind of similar to Detroit last year, where they go out week 1 against Kansas City, and nobody's like Detroit is winning,
Yeah,
and they
exactly.
go up big time upset. And obviously, for ones who kind of watched them the previous season, 9-8, and just missed the playoffs, but kept Green Bay out of the playoffs. So you kind of knew, like, from that week 18 last game, okay, Detroit's going to be the truth. They go to week
Yeah.
one to Kansas City and just completely shock the world. And that can be another thing for the Jets where you can't be scared of the team. I mean, it's, oh, well, we have to play the 49ers. Well, yeah, but you might have to play them in the Super Bowl. So, like, you can't avoid them. What you probably can. I mean, if they get knocked out, but you want to beat the best to be the best. And like you just said, probably two of the most talented rosters in all of football. Go prove yourself. Go
Yeah.
pull what Detroit did last year, where it counted out, no one believed in them, and now they're in a conference championship game. You can't be scared of the opponents in front of you. You got to just go and handle some business, and maybe you build momentum off that throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's a great point that you make, because we all knew Detroit right when they walked off that field in Green Bay with that win. They've got the coach, they got the quarterback, they've got the weapons. Like, we knew that team was going to be good, and they made a statement week one. Same thing we knew with the Jets. Walking off that field last year, we knew that the New York Jets, what they needed was a quarterback, and they've got one now. Aaron Rodgers is back. So, yeah, I totally agree. It's a great point. Make a statement like Detroit did last year on the road. Same scenario as well. Should be a lot of fun. Should be a great game. I think it'll be an awesome game. Now, in terms of some big games for the Jets, kind of talked about it. I think San Francisco, that's a big one, obviously, to open up the year, as we've talked about a lot here. Other ones as well. I mentioned it in some of my top primetime games. That Jets-Bills game will be big. I think if the Jets want to win the division, they're going to have to at least split against Miami and Buffalo, where you take both against New England, you split against Miami and Buffalo. But if you're going to want to do that, I think most likely you probably split where you win one at home, Buffalo takes one at home. Who knows? Maybe you sweep Miami. We'll see. Maybe you sweep one of them, go 5-1 in the division and take it home. But I think if you're going to want to win the division, you've got to win those divisional home games. So that one against Buffalo will be big. Of course, the home opener is big. I don't think it means a whole lot because it's New England. The Jets should have no problem winning that game. I know they're coming off of 2 road games. It's a short week, but they'll be able to get up for that game. It's going to be the home opener. MetLife will be rocking. If you can't get up for your home opener, even though it's on Thursday night, then I don't know what to tell you. New England's so bad, especially if Drake May's playing in that environment. I mean, New England probably goes into that game 0-2 anyway. So I don't want to be too mean on New England, but we know what the Patriots are.
Yeah.
In terms of other big games, that Pittsburgh game, I think, is a lot harder than what people think. A lot of people look at that game and say, oh, it's the Jets have so much more offensive firepower than them. But that is a game that we have to remember here. They'll play Buffalo in week 6. And then after that, they'll have a short week and they got to play Pittsburgh on the road in primetime. One of the toughest stadiums in football to play in, let alone on primetime. So that'll be a big game. I think that's going to be one of the toughest games actually for the Jets this year, is that Pittsburgh game, just because of the circumstances. They'll be coming off a short week, potentially an emotional win. Can they get back dialed in time to play on the road in a hostile environment against a really good Steelers defense? Then who knows? That point in the season, it'll be week 7. They might be around that 500 mark. That could be a big AFC win for them to help their playoff hopes. Houston as well, another big one. I mean, Thursday Night Football will be on Halloween. The Jets were one of the only teams last year in the NFL that had a recipe for stopping CJ Stroud. Hopefully they have that. Hopefully they still have that recipe. And if they still do, hopefully they use it there in that week 9 game. That'll be big. If the Jets have big dreams of potentially taking home one of the top spots in the AFC, they're going to have to get through Houston to do that. So that'll be a big matchup as well. And then, of course, Miami, I threw on here as well. And then there's one other game. Oh, the Rams game late in the season. It's week 16. While it's non-conference, Rams are a really good team. So I think that'll be a big matchup there. And in terms of how the Jets schedule is as a whole, like in terms of strengths or not strengths, how like harder weak or harder easy, I think it's kind of a mix, because after they play San Francisco week 1, I think the next 4 weeks are very favorable. They get Tennessee, they get New England, Denver, then Minnesota. All of those games are beatable. And I think Tennessee's a solid team, but I mean, I don't, that defense against Will Levis, the Jets are better than the Titans. Like, they should beat the Titans. New England, we talked about. Denver is going to be one of the most mid teams in football this year, potentially.
Under mid,
Viewers at
below.
home, you want to use this against me when they lose to Denver, because there is always that one surprising loss for every NFL team you can. And in Minnesota, I know it's in London, so that kind of evens the playing field. But whether you're facing Darnold or McCarthy, no reason your defense should not win that game. So there's not a crazy argument to be made. The Jets could be 4-1 if they lose to San Francisco. It should be, I think.
I was just about to ask. So, are you saying that they will be sitting at 4-1 or 5-0 through the first? Guess you could say quarter of the season.
I'm gonna say realistically 4-1. I just think as a Jet fan, I can't sit here and see this team 5-0. I just there's always something, and maybe I just don't. I mean, please, 5. I would not be control myself if the New York Jets are 5-0. I probably wouldn't be able to control myself if they were 4-1. I mean, during 2022 when they were 6-3, I thought we were winning the Super Bowl. I was like, look at us, game managing Zach Wilson. Look, this is great. But no, yeah, I mean, I would say 4-1. I think they'll probably, if I had to guess, they probably won't beat San Francisco. And then they'll probably lose to the Niners, and then they'll come back and rattle all 4 straight. That's what I think. And then the next big test on prime time to prove something, because then they kind of beat up on lower level opponents. And then the next big test would then be that Buffalo game, where they'll be 4-1, another chance on prime time to prove themselves. That you've got to win at home, I think. It's not a must win, but what do they say? It's can't lose.
Can't lose.
Can't lose. So, my prediction right now is 11-6, but as I always do every year, by at the end of training camp, after I see Aaron Rodgers throwing to Garrett Wilson, I'll probably have him at 12 wins. So I always end up getting overly optimistic. So 11-6 now, but give it 2 months and I'll have the team at 12 wins. So
what is the floor? Just
floor. I've said this the last couple years with the Jets, or actually last year with the Jets. I don't know if there's an exact floor record wise. I think the floor for the Jets is if Rodgers just isn't the same. Like if he is just not the same, this team is just like, he's not even 60, 70% of what he is. Let's just say he's just like, if Rodgers just isn't the same and they start to turn on the coach again, it starts to get to the point where the offense isn't moving the ball and it's all the defense. That's what I think the floor is. And I said that last year too. Like because we didn't really know how Rodgers would be last year. Turns out he's been a lot better with the locker room than a lot of us expected. But like the floor last year for me was like, if Rodgers turns into that diva again, or that guy that's all about me, doesn't care about the young players, and just it's a disaster in the locker room. Turns out that never happened. He was really good in the locker room, but unfortunately he only played 4 snaps. So that was probably even worse than the actual floor. But I mean, wins wise, I just don't see how a team that won 7 games with Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian could
get any worse.
Win less than that with Rodgers. So I think the floor, they like at the very least, they've got to be 8 wins. Maybe even 9 wins. Like even if Rodgers is like really not that good, he's still better than those 3 guys. So am I crazy to say their floor has got to be like 2 wins better, 9-8? Maybe it's 8-9. I mean, look, if everything goes south and they've got a ton of injuries, let's say all the offensive line injuries start to pile up again, then I can maybe see that. I think the floor may be 7. Let's just say 7-10 probably. Like they can't get better, they won't get worse. I don't think they can get worse. Probably 7-10. If that,
I would say 9-8.
9-8.
I just don't see them getting worse. There's no possible way, especially healthy Rodgers. And knowing, I don't think I've ever seen or I can recall a healthy Rodgers team just absolutely pathetic, unless they are ridiculed by injury. But a healthy Rodgers, a healthy team with that schedule, I mean, I think 9-8 is the worst it can possibly get. I think 12-5, what you predicted, is very, very solid. Maybe even 13-4 if they can kind of sweep in the division.
13-4, I think is probably their ceiling. Yeah. But yeah, I agree. Like 9-8. I mean, I think they're a very high ceiling team. We've seen this team win 7 games the last 2 years with the worst quarterback play in football. and I keep saying this, all these people I know, everybody keeps telling me like, oh, dude, Rodgers coming off a torn Achilles. Like, I understand that. I get it. Believe me, I was there. I saw it. I saw his Achilles blow up on the field. Believe me, I know. But it's like, he doesn't have to be MVP Rodgers. If this guy is 80% of what he was, this team's going to win 11 games. 80% of Rodgers is so unfathomable how much better that is than Zach Wilson. It's like not even in this spectrum. And I'll say this too, like, how many athletes recently with modern technology, I'm not a doctor. I'm not Dr. Neil Elitraz, I think, who does all the surgeries for the NFL. But when's the last time there's like an athlete that had a major injury recently that was just not the same? I can't think. Maybe I can't, like, right off the dome. Like, there's been a lot of players that have torn their ACLs over the last couple seasons, and I feel like they've all coming back. Right? I mean, again, I know he's 40. I get all that, but do you have any?
I mean, we're seeing Nick Chubb come back after what we probably
Yeah,
thought
that's true.
was the nastiest, and he
I know
suffered like two of
that was worse
those.
than Rodgers.
Worse than Rodgers. He had one similar in Georgia, and he is still Nick Chubb, still one of the best backs in football. So I think what a lot of people probably aren't understanding is like, yes, again, he is 40 years old, but he is an NFL quarterback. Like the medicines and the surgeries, the technologies and all that is so much better than anything that we have ever seen, ever
Yeah,
witnessed, ever. And they're not rushing him back either. They don't need him really participating in OTAs and those type of things. Like, honestly, if I'm the Jets, I'm probably gonna be like, hey, we just chill, just relax, unless you are 100% confident and with multiple testing to like let us know, like, okay, he's back to normal. But if it's up to Rodgers, like he can wait up until week 1 to play, which wouldn't
yeah,
be smart, wouldn't be ideal, could be very rusty. But just for
yeah,
the sake of like, let me spare myself and not risk any more injury, Rodgers literally can wait until week 1 to play full contact. I think people are just kind of overreacting. Like, I don't see him coming back and being worse, getting hurt again. I think he's going to be Aaron Rodgers that we are used to seeing.
I agree. I think it's, he's said a lot. He has said a lot of things, I guess, outside of football that are sometimes questionable. Some of his theories might not be
Yeah,
the
but
smartest, but I think that's why a lot of people don't like him. And I think he's a very unlikable guy. He's also kind of, he's not a dumb guy where he knows what he knows how to kind of play around with the media. Um, I think sometimes he says things for attention to get the media to to kind of overreact, to get people to overreact. And I think that's why. Like, I've never seen an athlete get so much hate over tearing his Achilles. Like, the amount of people that want to see him tear his Achilles again on Monday Night Football against Leonard Floyd is wild to me. Like, there's so many people I know, they're like, dude, I hope Rodgers tears his Achilles. I'm like, that's just, I don't know. I'm not that type of person to root for injuries. I don't know.
yeah,
I just don't get why. I get, maybe some of his views, maybe some things he does. Maybe you just hate him because, Packers, he had all that success there, and it's kind of like Brady or even people not liking Mahomes or whatever. I get all that, but like, I hated Tom Brady, despised him with a passion. Never once did I ever wish Tom Brady got hurt, nor even if he got hurt would my team ever beat them, because we had Bowles and Gaze trying to beat him. So you could throw me out there and the Jets would have lost.
I'm seeing a lot of memes and stuff. Rogers has the opportunity. His Achilles has the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever. But I think
Yeah,
just a great point. You can hate a player, hate a team as much as possible. Like, I would never wish an injury on Jalen Hurts or anybody just in football, because you want good football. Like, and these are still
exactly.
humans at the end of the day with a job.
Yeah.
So you want good football. Like, again, I'm not trying to watch Easton Stick and Aiden O'Connell go at it on Thursday night. Like, I want good football, starting quarterbacks, elite level ball.
Yep.
So rooting for the injuries is kind of weird to me, but I guess that's what you get when one person owns your team.
That is true. And yeah, it was like, I'm glad that's a great point you talked about there, because It's funny. So I was talking to somebody about the other day about that too. Is like, it's a great point because last year all these people were complaining, "Oh, the Jets have so many primetime games," and I get it. It was rough. Believe me, it was rough for me to watch those
Very
primetime games. But
for
that's what
everyone.
that. I'm glad you brought that up though. As a football fan, you don't want to see the league's best get hurt because guess what? Then you got to go watch. I mean, Tyrod's not terrible. I don't even want to talk about it. But last year, you had to watch Zach Wilson. How painful was that? You never want to see the best in the league get hurt because, yeah, it affects the game. It affects the play. Like if Mahomes got hurt, all those primetime games for Kansas City, they'd be
Oh
nothing.
my goodness.
Like
They
it's
might
just,
have Taylor Swift playing quarterback if
I know.
Mahomes got hurt.
Yeah. And it's just like, as a football fan, remove the team, remove your hatred. You shouldn't want to see a guy of that caliber ever get hurt, because it affects the game. Like you want to see, it stinks when the best players go down. That's what makes the sport so great. So I don't know. I also think people just are kind of like the Jets over the years have had this same old Jets mantra, which believe me, I understand because they haven't made the playoffs. But I also think there's a lot of people that are starting to realize that the Jets might actually be good for once, and they don't want that because they want them to stay at the bottom of the NFL. And I think the only way to do so is to hope that Rodgers gets hurt. So it is what it is. Hearing it from a whole lot of Bills fans out there,
Of course. I
you know,
mean, look who it's
saying,
from.
just saying, you know, enjoy Marquez Valdez Scantling and his drops in the red zone this year. Just saying. I mean, let's just be
Uh,
honest here, though. Like, if it was Josh Allen or Mahomes got hurt last year, the NFL would be like, oh, this is awful. This is terrible for the sport. Rodgers goes down. Tear it again, please.
if Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes got hurt next season, they might just postpone the season until they get
They
back
might.
healthy. Just
And that's another thing too. When Rodgers was trying to come back from the injury, everybody's like, "Oh, he's a me guy. He's doing it for all the attention." How is he a me guy if he's risking further injury? That's not a me guy. What? That doesn't make any sense. Like the logic doesn't make sense there. If it was Mahomes coming back, though, it'd be like, "Oh, look at Mahomes, so powerful. Mahomes this is
what a
great for the
leader.
next generation of football. What a leader. What a guy. This is amazing." Ugh. Anyway, let's get to some teams with the most difficult, easiest schedules, and then we're going to show you uniforms that you might want to close your eyes. So, you want to start with your, I guess, easiest, or would you like me to go?
I'm going to start with my easiest. I have
Okay, sounds
one
good.
team that just really stands out. And I know we talked about them earlier, the Falcons, their first three games being
Yep.
like absolutely tough. But looking at the remainder of their schedule, you get the Panthers twice, you get the Saints twice. You do play the NFC East, so like Dallas and Philly are going to be tough. But you also get Washington and you get the Giants in that stretch. And then you play the AFC West, which outside of Kansas City, which I think they could upset, you play the Raiders, you play the Broncos, you play the Chargers. Broncos and Chargers, we know, are both going to try to outmid each other kind of throughout the year. Raiders, I feel like, are going to be respected, but not that good. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
looking at that Falcon schedule, 12-5, I think they should be 12-5 when this year ends. That is one of the easiest schedules in all of football. And I didn't even throw in Tampa Bay because Tampa Bay was a playoff team last year. So
Mm-hmm.
they could split. They could completely sweep the division. But just outside of Kansas City, Dallas, Philly, and Pittsburgh, I believe you mentioned up there,
Yep.
their schedule's really not that tough. They should be able to win 12, 11 games this year.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. Um, it's that AFC, if you're in the NFC South and you got a good team, I mean, you get, you're kind of lucky. You got to face New Orleans twice a year. You got to face Carolina twice a year. So they'll have a pretty good chance. Giants, like you mentioned, right? They're, what
Yep,
are they,
Giants,
later in their schedule?
Commanders.
Yep.
Yeah.
Commanders. Yeah, because they play the NFC East. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that stretch, New Orleans, Denver, and then they got a bye week in between that too. So if they get like those two teams, then they get a bye, then they come out. I mean, their final stretch there, like you mentioned, 6 games against probably all non-playoff teams. Maybe the I don't know. The AFC's so loaded. I don't think they're, like you said, I think the Raiders will be respected. They'll be competitive. They're not going to be a pushover. Can't go in looking ahead, but you're probably looking at 6 non-playoff teams when it comes to Chargers, Minnesota, Raiders, Giants, Washington, and then Carolina. So, yeah, I mean, they start out with that tough stretch, Pittsburgh, Philly, Kansas City, but then they get moving. And hey, look, I mean, they got Kirk. They got a good team. They got some weapons. I don't think it's crazy to say they could beat Pittsburgh week 1 at home. You know?
I don't think so either. I think
So,
they're capable.
yeah. And then, you know, Philly, Kansas City will be tough, but yeah, after that, they get good stretch, and they don't have to go out to Seattle. Like, if you're going to play Seattle, you're going to want to play them home. Going on the road in Seattle is always tough, always difficult place to play. So they get Seattle at home, which is a nice break for them. But, and then, too, they get what? Dallas? Even some of their tougher teams, they get at home. Some of their tougher matchups, yeah, like you said, they're at home. So, yeah, I agree. Atlanta's definitely a team with one of the more favorable schedules. I will say, I'll go over to this. This is an interesting one in terms of favorable schedules, because it's not like they're playing easy teams, but they get the games at home. That's the Chiefs. All of their like really difficult games this year feels like they're at home. Now, I do know they have to go to Buffalo, they have to go to San Francisco. So those are tough. But they get Baltimore at home. They get Cincy at home. They get Houston at home. I mean, they get all these tough games. Probably their 3 toughest games of the year. They get them at home. I mean, that's just, it is what it is. They're a good team. They're going to get them at home, but you know, if there was, you know, and then after that they get 3 on the road. Then they obviously play Falcons, and then they get the Chargers and the Saints. Then they have a bye week. Then they come out of that bye week. They face the Niners on the road, which will be tough. And they face the Vegas on the road. Now, Vegas always gives them a problem, but I don't know. I still think they probably come away with that. And then they get Tampa, which is beatable at home. You get Denver at home. You also get Tampa, a warm weather team going to a cold environment. Denver, you should have no problem being at home. Then they do go on the road for Buffalo. But then after that, you have a stretch of Carolina, Vegas, Chargers, all 3 winnable. So, and then they close out with Denver. I just know this. They have the script. The Jets are going to have to close out with Miami, a tough team. And the Chiefs are going to get Denver, and they're going to win the AFC because of that. That might be the script. What are your thoughts on the Chiefs schedule?
I mean, it's a little suspicious everybody's at home. All those tougher opponents are at home. But for Kansas City, I mean, nothing's given, nothing's a guaranteed. I know they are reigning Super Bowl champs, but they got the biggest target on their back. So I think a lot of teams are going to play their best ball against Kansas City. So I think Atlanta's a team that can end up beating them. And like we said here, Vegas always plays them pretty tough. I almost said the Chargers. I don't even believe that. But there's just some teams there that's going to play them pretty tough. So I don't think it's going to be all a cakewalk for Kansas City. If I had to record predict, I'm probably going, hopefully Chiefs Kingdom don't get mad at me for this. I probably see 11-6. I feel like there's some games they might slip up. Last year, we didn't expect the Raiders to come in there and kind of do Kansas City how they did.
Especially on Christmas, too, like a prime spot.
Exactly. So there's some teams that I feel like can give Kansas City a run for their money. We're definitely not talking about 17-0, but the schedule is very favorable as far as just getting those tougher opponents at home.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. Like, they got some tough opponents on their schedule, like you said, and I want to make that clear. Like, it's not like the teams they play are easy, but they get all the tough games at home, which is favorable for them. And look, they are Kansas City at the end of the day. They got the target on the back, but a lot of these games they're going to be favored in because they've won back-to-back. But to be fair, they did lose last week in week 1. We talked about it earlier against Detroit. So Baltimore, I mean, I know they were without Kelsey. That was fair, I guess. But still, they lost at home, even though they were out without him. So maybe Baltimore goes in there and defeats him week 1. But yeah. Do you have any difficult or schedules or even some other easy ones?
For difficult, I don't really have just opponent wise, but just the AFC North in general. I feel like is a schedule for all four teams that is extremely tough. Again, I believe everyone plays. Well, everyone does play the NFC East, so you have to get Philly, you have to get Dallas, and then obviously all of the teams play each other twice. I mean,
Yep.
for teams for a division that is known for defensive toughness and grit and those type of things, it's going to be fun to watch these teams play each other, but also get those very high powered offenses like Dallas, like Philly,
Mhm.
to come into the building or you go to them to kind of just prove what they got. So I kind of feel bad for the AFC North, and I don't think we're seeing three teams make the playoffs this time coming out of that division.
Yeah, definitely. There is one other schedule that I will say is difficult. That's Buffalo. They've got a stretch, which is like they kind of got a little unlucky. They got to play Baltimore on the road. They got to play Houston on the road. They obviously got to play the Jets and Miami on the road. But they have a stretch there, 3 weeks where they play Baltimore, Houston, Jets, all three on the road,
That's
3 weeks in a
tough.
row. Then they have a stretch of Miami, Indy, Kansas City, then then San Francisco, Rams, Detroit.
Oh
That is
God, that is
brutal.
tough. That is
Brutal.
tough. I feel like the only
So,
thing that makes that easier for them is the Colts, who are getting so disrespected. The
yeah, the
Colts are
Colts
going
are
to
they're
be
underrated.
good, and we've already talked about the Colts. We're not even going to get more in depth into that, but that is a brutal stretch of games for Buffalo.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and in New England too. I don't want to keep beating up on them, but their beginning of their season, they could have gave them something better. They got to go. This is their first part of their year. Cincy, Seattle, Jets, San Fran, Miami, Houston. Really? Like rookie quarterback, new coach. You couldn't have given them, I don't know, Chargers early in the year, maybe throw them Arizona. There's not many games the Patriots will be better than the other team, but you could have at least
That's
given them the Chargers week 1, right?
no.
Come
Let
on,
let them
schedule
suffer.
maker.
Let
Rot.
them suffer.
Yeah.
Yes. They should have honestly, if I was in the NFL, I probably would have given them. You said San Fran is in there, right? You should have gave
Yeah,
the
on the road. They
Patriots
got to go
like.
Jets on the road, then San Fran on the road.
So that's
Oh
exactly what I was
man.
just about to say. You should have gave them Jets, San Fran back to back, and then is Seattle at home or is that in New England?
In New England. They go since he's on the road, Seattle's at home, they split.
Okay, I'm saying if Seattle was on the road, I'm say how about you give them the Jets on the road, then San Fran to fly back to New England and fly back out to Seattle the
Yeah.
next week if he was on the road. Let them suffer.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad for them whatsoever.
No, I don't either. It's great to see. And then another stretch. Chicago, Rams, Miami, Indy. Bye. Then their 2 of their last 4 will be against Buffalo, which they ain't. I don't know. New England might win 3 games this year. I'm not even
Yeah, I
joking.
was about to
Like
say three might be the lucky number.
with the way this schedule broke for them,
Goodness,
they might legitimately. And I know there's always upsets, but there is no chance they go into San Francisco and beat the Niners. Zero chance.
absolutely not.
And then no chance they beat Houston. Or maybe they catch maybe they beat Jacksonville, maybe in London. But even then, God,
That's
brutal,
rough.
brutal, brutal, brutal. Terrible for them. All right. Jersey's coming up next. Let me. Okay, so the Giants have released new uniforms, as we mentioned. A little bit early on, we gave you a sneak preview. Now, for some of you, you might want to close your eyes for this one. They aren't pretty at all. Now, these are their new 100 season dating back to 1925. I don't know. They're not the worst ever, but here they are. The 2024 Giants alternates that they will wear in 2 games. Kind of looks like a hockey jersey or a CFL jersey. If for those of you that are hockey fans, if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, they literally look like the Montreal Canadiens. And I'll say this. I'm glad we don't have the Giants, I guess, on our schedule, so we don't have to run into a situation where maybe we play them. But the other team's gonna have some pressure on because you cannot lose against this team in these uniforms. You just can't. If you lose to them in these uniforms, the Michigan helmets, the gray pants, and by the way, Daniel Jones, like, how can you have negative drip in a jersey picture, like whatever they call it? How do you has it happen? Like, you have negative drip. What is it? Just no drip at all. That pass probably got picked off, if we're being honest here. Um, so it's bad. It's bad. But there they are, the 2024 Giants alternate uniform. Um, I don't know what'll be worse, the New York Giants in the 2024 season or those uniforms. They might honestly be both really bad. What are your thoughts on those beauties?
Okay, that pass probably got picked off is absolutely crazy. But Michigan helmets, like we said off air, Michigan helmets, and then like Green Bay brown khaki pants with
What these are
the
so bad.
Steelers bumblebee like jerseys. I don't know. It it is bad. Like this is a team with no aura whatsoever. Is
Nope.
this is pathetic. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, they're bad. And like we said, what I think, if we're going into like the most worst jerseys, the jerseys that need to be burned in NFL history, those Eagles ones we were talking about, those yellow ones you mentioned, the Broncos, those ugly brown ones.
Yellow and brown.
Yeah, those are like circus uniforms, and then they kind of look like a worse version of like Western Michigan colors,
Yeah.
with the brown and gold or yellow. Um, those are ugly. And then I would also say those Packers one, which is what we talked about as well. Now, what do you think's better? Bumblebees or these?
Bumblebees.
Really? You do? Interesting.
Respectfully. Just
Do you imagine if
looking
the
at
Bumblebees had the striped pants?
those would be terrible. Like, don't
They would
even.
be.
They're already terrible, but just for football fans, I mean, it's been a great week. Again, how we kind of started off with NCAA having a trailer and the
Yeah.
schedule coming out and those type of things. But in the same week, we had to look at these Giants jerseys, and they're going to be on Hard Knocks, which is just like
Yeah.
a lose-lose. Malik Neighbors has it rough. So not only are you playing with Daniel Jones, you're in
Running
these fugly
cardio.
uniforms, and then you're on Hard Knocks, so everyone's gonna be able to see your frustration and like, or that might be good for Malik Neighbors. Now he's like, now y'all can see what I deal with every day. Like you think you hate your job? Imagine catching passes from Daniel Jones. So just the Giants they found a way to kind of stink up the week pretty quickly before the season even really started. They are already 0-2 to start the year.
Yeah. 0-2 and might be 0-3 if they lose to the Vikings in the opener.
They're losing to the Vikings in the opener.
I mean, if they were these, definitely. And
I'd
by the way, NFL teams, message: you cannot lose to the Giants if they are wearing those uniforms and you lose to them. Your franchise needs to be disowned, abandoned, send it to the CFL, XFL, UFL, whatever they want you to do.
this is what's going to happen. I feel like they are going to play us in those uniforms once, either the Thursday night opener or they're going to wait until
Yeah.
Thanksgiving to wear those as we wear our throwbacks. Now, I think if you lose to the Giants, which we might be the team to do it, if you lose to the Giants with those uniforms, your win should be vacated for the season. So like you should be able to go all the way to the playoffs, even to the Super Bowl, however far you can go, and every win should be vacated if you lose to the Giants in those uniforms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because not only did you
They,
lose to the Giants in those
or,
uniforms, you lost to Daniel Jones with no drip in those uniforms.
yes. How about this? If you lose to those in the Giants in those uniforms, or to the Giants in those uniforms, you got to wear them for a game.
You got to give up some draft picks and wear them for a game.
Yeah, you should. They should take draft picks from you if you lose them. If you lose to them.
Whatever colorway that you wear, can you just imagine? Let's just keep this up. Keep this up for a minute. Can you imagine, like the Broncos, blue still how we got it with the orange going back, orange and blue color scheme, and then for the pants they do like gray.
Those pants are so ugly. The gold, like this yellow tannish, whatever you want to call it.
If they would have did white pants, I think it would have looked a
Yeah,
little better.
yeah,
But
exactly.
I mean, I
Or
know this is. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if these are the jersey is supposed to be. I did see the year, but these are bad. These are some of the worst I've ever seen in my life.
all the Giants had to do was bring back, those red uniforms they used to wear.
Yes, so simple. Red uniforms with the gray pants, or you can even go
Yeah,
white pants.
like those red uniforms are actually pretty cool. If they brought back the red uniforms, people they would be respected for that. Not these. Like I'd give them respect. I'd be like, you know what, good move for the Giants. You finally doing something good other than giving. You know, they did they gave they might be owing like 10 at this point. They gave Daniel Jones 40 million. They made these uniforms, and
You play in
I
MetLife. No
mean
offense to the
that
Jets,
is
but
true.
for
No,
those who
yeah,
have been
world
to
giant
MetLife,
air conditioner.
yeah, it's
And
it.
they drafted, I mean, I feel bad for Malik Neighbors. If you're gonna do cardio, you want to do cardio looking good. He's not even gonna look good doing cardio.
And I already hate the Giants uniforms to begin with. Everything about them I feel are outdated and just ugly.
They're
But now
boring.
he gets to wear these as well for 2 games while running cardio.
those they're gonna look, I think, worse on field.
Oh,
Because the stripe
absolutely.
across the top is just, it looks so weird. Or the stripe across the chest.
I don't know when the NCAA team builder they were doing when they made these, but
They're not it.
these are not good.
Not at all. My eyes are starting to bleed, so I had to take them off the screen there.
Yeah.
Anyway, final topic of the day. Rough uniform. So we will end on, I guess, a higher note than those. Wide receivers. There've been a lot of wide receiver news this offseason. Obviously a lot of, you know, kind of, signings, been some guys still out there waiting to, for signings. Obviously a lot of draft picks as well, very loaded draft class. And we talked about it a little bit last week, but the wide receiver kind of diva label that gets put on them. And I guess wide receiver from a perspective of like the outside perspective, where a lot of people view wide receivers as divas, guys that only care about themselves. So we'll get into it a little bit here. I guess we'll start with you. Kind of what is your thoughts on the whole wide receiver diva persona, all that stuff, where it feels like if there was people would to label guys that were all about themselves, it would be, wide receivers.
I think you said it perfectly last week, where that is the
Mhm.
one and only position in all of football where you are relying on somebody else to,
Yeah.
I guess, make you look good. Not really make you look good, but they your paycheck, your whatever it is, like your career is in the hands of the quarterback. So
Yeah.
I really don't like the fact of them being labeled as divas because I mean, I get paid to catch the ball.
Yep.
I can't do that unless you don't throw the ball to me. And
Hmm.
some guys where kind of just great guys throughout history, Justin Jefferson, we can go Randy Moss, we can go Calvin Johnson, like great guys where you can basically say 7-Eleven, like, hey, I'm always open, give me the ball and make something happen. And for those guys where you can have a huge impact on the game and you're not getting the ball, I can understand how that is very frustrating. So some of the things though, I mean, like Odell, for instance, kind of the antics with the net and the throwing the helmet.
Yeah.
Some of those things I don't necessarily agree with. Like there's a better way to handle the situation, but also from someone who has played receiver and has played corner, so I can see both sides of it.
Yeah.
It is frustrating because you are going through a week just full of practice of running routes on air, or let's just say scrimmaging, and you kind of know what type of looks because you're going up against the scout team, so you kind of know what looks you're going to see come game time. So, kind of, if you are practicing all throughout the week, like, hey, we got these set of plays set up against these set of looks, and you're going to be the main target in a lot of those cases, and you're not getting the ball, that is going to be frustrating. Or if you're playing against teams that you're getting double team, safety help, whatever the case is, and the coach or the quarterback or whatever isn't making adjustments to get you open, move you around, put you in the slot, kind of line you up maybe on the other side of the field, line you up different ways to get you the ball, that can be frustrating because you just feel like you're out there running around, especially if the team is losing, like you're not helping the team lose. So I get it. I don't really think they should be labeled as divas again when, like you said, like, hey, I need to catch the ball. That's how I get paid. That's how I get the stats. So for a wide receiver, I think we kind of need to take a step back on that diva kind of label and just be more understanding of, I want the ball. I want to help my team win. I can't get the ball unless you give me the ball. They're not divas. I think they're just competitors.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like you mentioned, you were spot on there with all that. It's the only position on the field that you have to rely on somebody else. Running back, it's other than the play calling, it's really you. You get the ball in your hands, it's all you. You don't have to worry about somebody passing it to you. And it's weird that the tight ends are a little bit different because they kind of have a little bit of a different role than a wide receiver. But it's similar with them too. Wide receivers just get more I guess hate or whatever criticism thrown their way. But yeah, I mean, you know, card, you have to catch the ball in order to, get the numbers like you mentioned, get paid, help your team. A lot of these guys, they want to help their team. You're not helping your team if quarterback's not getting the ball and you're just running around. I think that's one of the biggest things too, is a lot of these guys are team first players. They want to help their team. And that's what gets frustrating is when quarterback's not getting them the ball and they are, losing in the game and they're not, all they're doing is, we could joke about it, but all they're doing is cardio and all that stuff. They're not going to help the team that way. It's not going to help them. They're not going to get them that big payday late in the season or in the off season or whatever later on in their career. It's tough. And I think that's why too, it's always been a battle between sometimes, number one receivers, number two receivers, sometimes guys wanting to be that number one, wanting to get the ball, wanting to be the first read, wanting to be the first option. I think that's what, similar to just what happened last year with the Jets, is like you could tell that they all lost Zach Wilson. They all lost faith in him because he wasn't getting the ball. He wasn't getting the ball out on time. He was holding on to the football. It was a bunch of screen passes. It was, so yeah, I don't think they should be labeled that way because you get a good quarterback and you have over 1,000 receiving yards, you're going to be happy. That's all that matters. But if you get a bad quarterback, you're not getting the ball, you're going to get upset. And that's what happened. That's when trades happen. Now, the Diggs situation in Buffalo was, I guess, I don't know what that all was. It's kind of weird because Diggs was getting the ball over there. Last year, they kind of limited him, though, seemed like late in the season. Just the whole way they use Diggs down the stretch. There's two sides to every story. It feels like him and Allen might have kind of lost connection between the two. The marriage kind of broke a little bit, but there's a lot of guys that if they're requesting trades as a receiver, it's because they're not happy. Probably if you look at their quarterback situation, it's probably not particularly good.
Yeah.
So I totally agree. It's tough. Every job in life, it's up to you. It's really one of the only jobs out there that you have to rely on somebody else. If that other person isn't good, it's almost like a group project. You can do all your part. Receivers can run the perfect route if they're open. When they're open, if the quarterback doesn't get them the ball, none of it matters. So, any other thoughts?
I think I might have lied just a little bit, just briefly. I feel like quarterback may also be another position reliant on others because if I can throw you the
Yeah,
ball, if you're not catching it, you know.
that is very
So
true.
I think it
How
kind of
Lazard.
goes both ways. I think it kind of goes both ways, but quarterbacks really don't get labeled like a receiver does. Usually you're just labeled a loser for whatever reason and just can't get the job done, whatever the case is. But
Yeah,
I just think I can see both sides of it. I can see both perspectives for a receiver and how media may portray it. But perfectly just said, where if you're kind of at work and or whatever the case is, and you got an A on the group project because you didn't do anything, like it's
Yeah.
a sour kind of feeling. So
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. Was well, wasn't that Josh Allen last year? He said I felt like I got an A on the project. I didn't do anything.
And I believe that was against Dallas, where
Oh,
James
I'm
Cook
sorry.
decided to be Barry Sanders. If I remember, I think he only threw 15
It might have
passes
been.
that game. So
Might have been the James
yeah,
Cook legacy game.
yep, the one and only James Cook legacy game against Dallas.
The only. No more James Cook's legacy games coming.
No, no, he's gonna have a good year. He's gonna have a
Yeah.
pretty solid year.
He's solid. Yeah, he's a solid, good running back. Before you know it, fantasy football will be here. And we will get into the fantasy football talk. Hopefully my
Can't
team's
wait.
better than it was last year.
I've started my draft board already.
I gotta do all. I gotta put in all the work I can do. I can put in.
Yeah.
I should say. So, any other closing thoughts before we finish it out?
That is it. Thank you for watching, and y'all have a good weekend. Make sure you tune in, like, and subscribe.
Yes, definitely make sure to please like and subscribe. We'll be back here next week talking all the latest in the NFL. So stay tuned, and I'll talk to you next time.